Hey, welcome, and welcome to the Hero Room. We are going to be talking about the last hero, the hero in the price tier of his own, Mark X. Now, Mark X is a tank, literally. Like, he is a tank. Mark X is the only $7 hero, and he perfectly fills the role. Now, he is the counterpart to a lot of the Kingdom Rush heroes, which are like dragons, like the big guys. He is the big guy of this game, and he does his job pretty well. Now, his first ability is Daredevil Crew. Crew troopers jump out to fight against enemies with Gauss shotguns. Why? Because it's fun. Now, the cooldown on this ability is regular. It's not very long, not very short. It's just regular. So, he initially has two crew troopers who jump out and start shooting things. That's cool enough. Now, what makes this ability special is that the crew troopers that jump out can be independently controlled, and they are not taking away or adding to your command points. They're just there as a separate entity. That is very nice because, well, just having extra platoons is rather nice. Their duration is a little short, though, but they do more than enough damage to make up for that. Now, the first augmentation for this ability, Platoon, adds a third trooper to jump out and fight. Now, this is a solid ability that adds 50% of your power to this ability. You get a third guy to your two duo guys. So yeah, I think that's a nice augment. I think it's interesting enough. Now, the second augment, Grenade Thrower, allows crew troopers to throw grenades, as the name might suggest. And that's a pretty good ability as well, because it adds some AoE to their kits. AoE means area of effect, by the way, which means they can do area damage, and with their grenades, and doing area damage is always nice. Now, the second ability is Deadly Cloud, another pretty good ability, made even better by its augmentations. Now, the rundown of this ability is that it releases a noxious gas cloud that causes damage to all enemies inside it, starting with a funny puffing sound. Now, this ability is rather solid on its own. It's an area of effect ability, which does damage, which is always nice, and it leaves a trail of gas behind you, which means you have a lot of zone control with this ability as well. It also has a fast cooldown, which is always nice for an ability that's rather strong. Now, the first augment for this ability is called Weakening Toxin. Enemies within the cloud deal less damage. Now, I don't have exact numbers on how much less damage they deal. I assume it's an okay amount. Honestly, I couldn't feel this change too much, especially with a lot of the enemies simply dying in the cloud anyways, so you could never really have them shoot you. But I suppose I'll take a buff when I can have one. Now, the second augmentation is called Corrosive Agent. The Deadly Cloud's potent acidic compound reduces the armor of affected enemies. Now, this makes the ability super, super good. Now, I'm all for reducing an enemy's armor, and when you can do it in an area, when you can reduce all the enemy's armors, that's even better. Reducing armor will help everybody, not only your hero, but also your other characters, scale super well into late game, because in the harder levels where you meet enemies with higher armor and you're not doing nearly as much damage because of their armor, being able to shred some of their armor is very, very nice. Now, his third ability says, Mark X is the best armored combat vehicle. Best armor, best crew, best ordnance. It even has a pine-scented air freshener. By the way, this ability is called War Machine, although you can't really call it an ability because even though it is a passive ability, it offers no visible stat changes, which kind of sucks. I'd like to see an actual stat change in an ability slot. It's kind of an empty ability otherwise, and that's a little disappointing. But the augments do make up for it. Now, the first augment is Need for Speed, increased movement speed. Now, with Darwin, I did kind of hate on this kind of augment. He had one which increased his movement speed as well. But what makes this different for Mark X is that when you're running around in Mark X, you can actually still fire while on the move. Your tank will still have its turret on top, which swivels around and fires. So having an increased movement speed is actually not that much of a detriment to you. It's actually rather nice for usability. Now, the second augment for this makes it even better. The second augment absolutely makes up for this empty ability slot. If they had simply made this the ability slot, the passive, I would have been super happy. Heat shells. Each attack permanently reduces enemy armor by 1. Shredding enemy armor is very good. Shredding enemy armor is a very useful ability, and having it on every one of your attacks makes it super, super nice, especially for those heavy late game enemies. Now that said, we are going to head into this mission. Now of note for Mark X is that he actually has 2 guns. One of the guns is his gigantic turret, the usual shell gun of a tank, which fires big shells, and the 2 mounted little machine guns on the side, which deal rapid fire damage at a much lower, they do a lot lower damage, but they are a lot faster. As you can see, he absolutely destroys these buildings. I do believe he prioritizes or can only fire at ground units with his big gun, but the little gun can shoot at anything. See, the shell gun absolutely destroys everything. Anything that it can hit, it does hit, and they die. The machine guns on their own also aren't too petty. Well, not petty, but pathetic. They aren't too weak. They do a decent amount of damage as is. Simply put, they're okay. They're not great. Anyways, we're gonna run in here, and we are going to start spreading our noxious cloud. As you can see, everything inside of it dies very, very quickly. And while these are some weaker enemies that will have a tendency to die quickly to AoE, he is still able to shred armor with it. So even into late game, even into the harder levels with harder enemies, he still will be doing a good amount of damage and shredding armor if they don't die to the cloud. Now we're going to go ahead and throw out his little dudes and send them in. Now these guys actually have a pretty big attack range. They have shotguns, but their shotguns don't seem to be limited by the fact that they're shotguns. His own range is rather nice. It's pretty standard, I would say. And yeah. Now, he is an incredibly tanky hero. No pun intended. Actually, no, absolutely intended. But he can take a lot of damage. He is a tank. That's what he's built to do. And he outputs a ton of damage while doing it. Now, combined with his little crew, they absolutely destroy enemy bases. Now, I'm not touching any of the controls right now. I'm simply watching. As you can see, they do disgusting amounts of damage. Now, would I recommend this hero is the real question. I would not necessarily recommend him. For $7, this guy better win the game for me. He better play the game for me. I better not have to touch anything for me to win. And, well, I still see myself touching controls to use him. So, I can't, in good conscience, recommend him. Not for a $7 price tag. He does do his job incredibly well. He is everything I would expect from a $7 hero, other than the self-playing thing. But, yeah, it's just $7 is an extreme amount, especially for a mobile game. If this Dr. Graf is able to do almost what this guy does for $2 less, that is like 2 whole apps. So honestly, I couldn't recommend this guy, but hey, if you want to tank, if you want to run around and decimate everything without a thought for general decency, I suppose, have at it. Go ahead and buy him. But for a $7 price tag, I would have to go with a 4 out of 10 would recommend. But those are just my personal thoughts. Hey, if you have the money, if you have the time, if you have the dedication to this game, you know, have at it. And that is all I have to say, really, about this character. Yeah, have a wonderful day. Be sure to like and subscribe. and have fun out there.